So we've been thinking about this a lot, but Switch 2 will really be a major generation shift for Nintendo. It's kind of crazy to think about.
Yes, we're in the final days countdown to the Switch 2 Nintendo Direct. And with the Switch 2, Nintendo is going to do the hardest thing that you can do in video games, which is have a console cycle generational shift.
Right.
We used to work at Nintendo. We've been through these. They're extremely hard. And every time you are basically starting over with your business and starting from scratch. But the more you look at this generation, it does feel like in, let's say, 7, 8 years, Nintendo's going to come out of this generation as a pretty different company than it is today. I'm not saying if it's better or for worse, just simply they're going to be changed by this experience and all of the other things that are happening around the company as well.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of factors that come into play that we're going to go into in this video that really makes you think about how it's truly like one era ending. It is going to be different, and it's going to feel different than it is today.
It is. And Nintendo's been around for 100+ years. They're going to be fine. They know how to reinvent themselves. They are a very forward-looking company, so they're not going to dwell on the past. But it's just, we want to go through some of the factors that are going to be kind of driving this change. And the first is one that has already happened and is kind of going to come to a head with this generation, which is this is the first console generation where you don't really have the fingerprints of Satoru Iwata on it for a long time. He passed away in 2015. The Switch came out in 2017, so he wasn't there for the launch of that. But the plans were already underway.
Well underway.
And understanding like what needed to happen in that transition from the Wii U to the Nintendo Switch, like he was still very much guiding all of that. And there's great new leadership team that's there now. Obviously you have Mr. Furukawa at the head, but you could say for the Switch generation, like, all right, we have this great new console, let's stay down that path. But once you have a new system, you have branching paths. It's like a game. It's like, what is the path that is going to bring me the greatest success for what I'm capable of doing? Yeah. And you need to make a decision versus just staying on the same path.
Yeah, I feel like Mr. Iwata, and we were there, we were so lucky to be there in the Mr. Iwata era of Nintendo. And it really is, he was someone that had a lot of vision and a lot of understanding of the direction he wanted the company to go in. And when we were at Nintendo going from the Wii U generation to the Switch generation, that roadmap was done, honestly, by Mr. Iwata. And it was a simple thing. This was something that they were telling us in the company, which was like, we have a plan. Mr. Iwata's plan is in place. We are staying the course. We're following the plan, And I think that obviously led to a lot of success, which has been very successful for Nintendo. But now that we're moving into the Switch 2 generation, yes, it is a more of an iterative approach for Nintendo. So some parts of it will be kind of following the same plan that was laid out before, but other parts of it are not. And now you don't have the plan. The plan you've reached the conclusion of the plan.
Yes.
You need a new plan.
Right.
And that's really hard, I think, to transition to the new plan.
And it's not to say that Mr. Iwata was infallible. He had some misses with the Wii U, other, pricing, the 3DS. Like, you can make a list of those things. But what he did have was a vision. He had conviction, and he was not afraid to make a decision.
Yes.
And that's the thing. Like, you can have all the options in front of you. Somebody needs to make the decision of, yes, this is what the company is doing for the next 10 years. And he knew what he wanted to do, and he said, this is the decision that's going to get made, versus, have the people who have, gotten a lot of experience over the last 8 years with Nintendo Switch. Are they ready to make those hard decisions? And do they have the same level of vision that Mr. Iwata has? We'll see.
He also had a lot of confidence from everybody around him.
Yeah.
Like, as the decision maker, yes, he was not afraid to make the decision, but his decision was very respected.
Right.
And truly, I don't think a lot of people argued against his decisions. He didn't have a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
So it was one of those situations where, it wasn't, once he made the decision, it was easy for all of us to say, yes, we're going to follow this decision. I don't know if that's the same, sort of context that Nintendo's at now, where they really have a bit more of like a committee approach. Like
Exactly.
There's multiple people at the helm now.
Right.
Mr. Furukawa was there, obviously very capable and learned under Mr. Iwata, but it's really a decision by committee versus a decision by an individual with a vision. And that can lead to some challenges where you might disagree with something.
That was the thing about Mr. Iwata, was he was plugged into everything. He was so knowledgeable at everything that he could make the decision about everything.
Right.
Versus now, Mr. Furukawa, like, he learned under Mr. Iwata, but he's very willing to say, Mr. Takahashi, you're in charge of software development. You make the decision.
Yeah.
Or, Mr. Beppu, he's like, you're in charge of these larger entertainment decisions. Please make that decision. So it's just a different style of different people making decisions in a different way.
Right.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out for them in the next 8 years.
Next, and we did a whole podcast about this, and other people have been pointing this out as well. It's just kind of a fact of father time in life, which is several of the major developers at Nintendo who we have known for 40-something years are probably going to phase out of the company through retirement over this generation. Again, assuming that this lasts, 7-8 years. A significant number of people who we have come to know and love and who have been kind of like the face and the defining factor of Nintendo, they may not be there anymore. So let's just go through some of the names and their current ages. Mr. Miyamoto is 72.
So in 8 years, how, what I mean? Like, that's the exercise that we're doing
here. A lot of people at Nintendo, they retire at 65. He obviously has reasons to stick around. And they need him, and he obviously wants to work, but we talk about in 8 years, he's going to be 80 years old, getting up there. Mr. Sakamoto, the creator of Metroid, just did a Famicom Detective Club. He is currently 65.
He's right there at that retirement age.
He is right at that age. Mr. Tezuka, Mr. Miyamoto's right-hand man, best friend, sidekick, whatever you want to say, he is 64.
Also the inventor of Mario and Yoshi.
Yes.
So kind of important.
Koji Kondo, musical genius, he is 63. Eiji Aonuma, I am always surprised. He
doesn't seem 62,
I always think
but
that
he
he's
is.
younger, but he is 62.
I know. Well,
the games that he makes those big Zelda games take a long time to come together. And he's even
7
said
years,
something you hear from a lot of game developers. He's like, I don't know how many more of these I have in me.
Right.
This is a draining thing.
Yes.
Kensuke Tanabe, who's worked on the Metroid Prime games and Donkey Kong, he's 62. And then, we mentioned him before, Shinya Takahashi, who oversees all of Nintendo development, he is 61. I'm not saying all these people are going to be gone, but some number of them probably will be.
Yeah.
So it's an open question of who is going to take these key leadership roles, not only within the gaming franchises that we know, but just within the company in general.
Right.
There's going to be kind of a natural cultural change that happens as new people take over those roles.
Yeah, I mean, these people have created the DNA that is so special and magical in Nintendo games. And obviously they can pass down their knowledge, and they have been. They've been very, clear about that. Like, we, run these teams. We really encourage our teams to learn the quote Nintendo way. And you can see that happening on some of these huge franchises. Like, for example, Mr. Aonuma and Mr. Fujibayashi has worked together for a very long time on the Zelda series. And you could say, like, okay, well, Mr. Fujibayashi will take over and it'll be all right. It probably will be all right. But it's going to feel different when these people exit the company, because you just can't replace them. Like, you can teach the skill set, but you can't replace them as humans. And it's going to feel different. It may not mean that the games are going to be bad, but it's just going to feel different.
I will give them a lot of credit. Like, we saw ourselves, like, there's a lot of learning that new employees do when they join the company to understand the Nintendo way. And, Mr. Miyamoto is very personally involved, and now they have the museum, and they can take all of these employees through there. But it's just kind of a natural change that happens. We also saw for ourselves when we were in Japan.
Yeah.
There's currently 2 buildings in Kyoto. One is kind of more of a business administration. The other is the development center.
Yeah.
They're building another development center, another very large building in between those 2, because they're like,
growing so fast.
Game development is getting to be a bigger venture. We need more people So just the number of Nintendo developers within the company is going to grow significantly. And that's, again, new people who were not living and breathing that culture before.
They have not been at Nintendo for 20 plus years.
Right. They may be coming from other companies. They may have other ideas. Part of this, I mean, there's a really good side of this too. It's like
totally.
We get some different perspectives, some different thinking. And it's just natural that there's going to be some sort of a change that is happening within the company as all these new people come in and all of that kind of, NES, Famicom era kind of starts to naturally cycle out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the good and bad parts of this. Like the good parts obviously are fresh ideas, fresh perspectives, new energy, which is really exciting. And I think Nintendo would welcome that level of new innovation. But also you are having to reteach people what it means, what it feels like to have that Nintendo DNA in all your work. We were not developers, obviously, but even as, just other people that worked at this company, like you do get ingrained, and it took us 14 years to really feel kind of ingrained in Nintendo culture, Nintendo company DNA. Like that is a learning curve. And we talk about a lot how a lot of times, like a lot of people are really not cut out for it. Like it's a very brutally difficult company to like feel comfortable at, and it takes time to do that. So all of these new people coming in, they're going to have to go through that exercise of doing that, and that process can be challenging, and they might have some turmoil there, as new people come in and they kind of weed out people that don't have the right fit, or all those things that come with growing and the changing of the guard, as it were. So,
right.
Yeah.
The other thing is just a lesser point, but maybe kind of it still kind of hangs heavy, is when you think of Nintendo, you think of some of the faces of those developers and their names. It's like, oh yes, I associate this person with this. With Nintendo now being less and less prone to put people out there and just be like, we are Nintendo. It's just this white, shapeless object with a logo.
Yeah.
Like, will we have the same relationships with these people? Like, will we know anything? Like, who is the guy who's now in charge of Mario games? Like, will we know them in the same way that we knew Mr. Miyamoto and Mr. Tezuka? Maybe not. It really doesn't matter on the quality of the games, but just for people who want to surround themselves in all things Nintendo, if they keep going down that path, you might not, and that makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah, I'm even being inside Nintendo, like my favorite part was getting to know the people behind all the games and the people that were, making the games, and getting to know them as humans, as people. And that was like the most special part of working there. And it does make me sad that, they've been going further away from that. And even a very sort of polished, scripted view that somebody might have of Nintendo developers are almost gone, with the exception of being in a Nintendo Direct for a few minutes. So it's a little bit like sad to think that you'll never really get to know them as people anymore. Like you'll never know what their favorite thing to eat is or whatever. Like you won't see those personal details anymore because the company has moved so far away from that. So yeah, this new generation that comes in, you might never know who it is. The games are probably going to still be great, but you just might not know the people behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Next is a very different kind of point. It goes to a bit more into some of the technical aspects of development, which is with the Wii U to the Switch, that was HD games to HD games. And we saw like Breath of the Wild on both of those platforms.
Right.
Very similar game, like not a lot of differences technically. But we don't know. We haven't seen the thing yet, but I think we're assuming that the Switch 2 is an entirely different beast. We're talking about 4K.
Yeah.
We're talking about a significantly more powerful type of system. And that's taking Nintendo, again, to the point of them needing to staff up all these developers. Like, we are now truly in this era of modern game development. We kind of need to change the way that we are thinking about making these bigger, more complex games.
Yeah, and we did see sort of the struggle from SD to HD, which was from Wii to Wii U.
And they talked about that pretty openly.
They did. They said that it was very challenging for them to make that jump. I'm assuming they're much better in terms of being staffed up to make the transition from HD to 4K, but it is still different. You need different things, like quite literally, like different assets for games. So it's just, it's just different. And all of these little things can lead to friction, it can add up. Like it can be like, oh, now this is a bit challenging for us, and we're struggling to do things that used to be pretty easy. And on top of that, we're dealing with all these other things, right? So it can stack up and it can become, really difficult for them, I think.
Yeah, and we've already started to see this happen in the Switch generation. These kind of smaller, quirkier games that we saw in the past, we don't see them quite as often.
True.
It seems like they're maybe playing some safer bets with the games they put out. And the games are still great, but there's that whole other more experimental side of Nintendo that we liked. And with them moving into this kind of 4K era where the games are bigger, it means they cost a little bit more to make, or in some cases...
take more time.
And take more, or in some cases maybe a lot more.
Yeah.
Is that going to change the types of games that they're willing to invest all these resources in, where it's like, well, if it's going to take a team of this many people, this long, and this many dollars/yen to make it, we maybe need to think harder about that versus when it was a game on a DS that, a very small team could make very quickly.
That's the other thing, is quickly is a key word. Like Nintendo has always been so scrappy in the Switch era of like every month there's a new game for you to play, at least one new game. And they've been so consistent about the output, the volume of games coming out for Switch in the Switch 2 era, because the games are going from HD to 4K potentially, because the scope of games have become bigger, the expectation for you to make a AAA game is now these elements that take more time and money. Does that mean we'll see that same output? Will there be bigger gaps between releases coming out that will, and then an opportunity for other things to take your attention away from Switch 2? Like all those factors are in play, So yeah, that's going to be hard for them to just kind of like reconcile. Okay, which games are we going to be making? How does that work against our roadmap of the games that we're launching? Like, it's going to be a different beast for them now.
Yeah, it just meant that, in the past, the risk to reward scale was a little bit different, where it's like, oh, we made Nintendogs, and it was made by a small team, and who knows how much Nintendogs cost to make. It probably wasn't much, but it went on to sell 30 million copies.
Yeah, right, there you go.
Wow, that's like free money versus like, we really need to weigh, do we think this can be...
Tears of the Kingdom level, 7 years
right,
development.
like, wait, this costs $100 million and it's going to take 5+ years. We need to think really hard about that. So it's just going to be interesting to see the types of games that Nintendo is putting out. And I think we hope, again, like...
I want the quirky games.
Don't stray too far from what people love, but obviously the decision-making criteria is different. It just is.
I need the 4K box boy, please.
Okay, that box is looking sharp.
That box looks so good in 4K.
The angles on that
60
box.
frames per second, 4K.
Wow. Okay. Lastly, and this is maybe the most interesting one out of all these factors, Nintendo is now a full-on entertainment company.
They are.
We would be told when we were there, Nintendo is an entertainment company, but when the Switch first came out, there were no theme parks launched.
There's no movie.
There were no movies released. We heard that those projects were coming, but that hadn't happened yet.
Right.
And now the situation is very different where, yes, they're still making games. That is still the lead business that Nintendo has, but they have all these really promising up-and-coming things in entertainment that are going to shape the direction of the company overall.
Yeah, now they have, they have $1 billion movie that they're definitely... be following up. They've already announced with more movies, and that's probably not going to stop. They're probably going to just keep making movies, I would think. Theme parks are very successful. They're opening more Nintendo stores. They're opening the one in San Francisco in a couple of months. So there seems to be just this more balance of other things in the entertainment sphere that's taking their attention a little bit from just doing games. And that's a good or bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. They're really, in everything. There's so many ways for you to, show that you're a Nintendo fan, or like, celebrate that you're a Nintendo fan. You can go watch a movie, you can play a game, you can go visit a store, you can go to a theme park. But it also means that they're not solely focused on making games anymore. So naturally, that's just going to make the games part of their business feel different and look different.
And I think if you ask them, they would say very definitively the entertainment side does not influence the game side. But
it does.
But I think if you gave them some truth serum and maybe spoke with some of their partners,
that's a different tune, though.
There may be a bit of friction with that thing, where if it's like Universal saying, hey, we're going to open a theme park for Donkey Kong that's going to cost us, I don't know, a lot of money.
Yeah.
What is your plan for Donkey Kong over the next 10 years?
You making a Donkey Kong game?
Whereas in the past, I never got the feeling that they had anything like that, like a brand roadmap. It was just like, oh, so-and-so, oh, great, they got an idea, let's make a game. And I think the expectation gets different when you have these partners who are investing also big money into these projects and also taking on a lot of risk. They want to make sure that both sides are working towards the same goal.
Yeah, you think that the Zelda movies coming out in 5 years, those people are not asking the question of like, what is your plan for the next Zelda game?
Right.
They absolutely are. They're going to want to know like how are we getting your audience to come watch this movie?
Right.
And that's it's all interconnected.
And that's not to say that, oh, well, they're just going to make Zelda the movie the game. Like, that's the easy way out. But these partners are going to be putting some pressure on Nintendo to think in a way that's different than they have. And they could just say no, but the pressure is still there. And at a minimum, it's going to cause them to think about these requests and these questions, which may have a very slow impact on the games business.
Well, I think that they are going to be forced to look at their business more holistically in general because of the way that they have really bursted into the entertainment scene in the last couple of years with the movies in the theme park and other partnerships, Lego, some other big brand partnerships, because they have been a company that's always been like very, insular in a way where they don't let a lot of outside factors dictate their choices and their decision making. But now that you've opened yourself up in a way to all these different other things with all of these different other partners, you're kind of forced to have those conversations. And whether or not, they feel like they have to do it, I think that these conversations at least make them think about things differently.
And we should say, like, Nintendo is also investing money into these things themselves, which gives them a big say. Or it's like, Mr. Miyamoto's a producer on the market. He's so involved in this. So it's not like,
like one-sided.
Oh, you're putting up all the money, so we have to basically do what you say. But again, if somebody's in your ear all the time saying, oh, we'd like you to do this, you should think about this, you should do this, you can't, you kind of have to think about it at a minimum.
I'm sure they're only partnered with these people because they respect them.
Yeah.
Like, Chris Melanandre and Mr. Miyamoto seem to have a very good partnership. Like, I would think that Mr. Miyamoto...
I respect Madam Web from Aviarad.
I'm going to pay my... Just kidding.
Have you seen Morbius? Ooh, it's a heck of a movie. But on that point, I do wonder, and again, maybe this will happen, maybe it won't, how do they handle the first thing they do in entertainment that is not a smash hit? Because everything's going great now.
Yeah.
People love this theme park. People love these movies. We got a couple of movies that are being worked on.
People love the other partnerships like Legos and the stores and all that stuff.
It's just natural, though, that eventually one of these is not going to hit in the way that you want. What happens then? Do they freak out and be like, ooh,
never again?
We need to back out of this, or we need to totally scale back, or do they learn from it? I don't know. All of these, it hasn't happened. We don't know how they're going to react. That'll be so fascinating to see what happens as a result. Because sooner or later it will. It's just natural.
This is another part of why this generation is going to be so defining and so different, is because they have all these other factors now that they have to contend with, and some of them are going to be smashing hits, and some won't be. And it goes the same for games too. They could have a real flop of a game too, like that. No one's immune to that.
Sure.
Nobody's immune to that. Not even Nintendo, who has a history of just making blockbusters, but. You could have a AAA game go south,
Yeah.
They could have a Concord problem. Who knows? Cancel it.
Wow.
It's all a very interesting lens to look at this through. We've been through Nintendo through a lot of these different generations working within the company and now on the outside looking in, and it's been really interesting to see the company evolve. And I think they're in one of the most interesting transitions that I've ever seen. They're so set up for being such a, just like such a juggernaut company for the next forever, but with this great reward can come with a great risk as well.
Yeah.
So it's just fascinating to see what happens. So I'm here.
Right.
I'm here to watch.
So of course we're all days away from the Switch 2 reveal. We're excited about that, but it's also just making us think about some of these bigger, longer term things.
Yeah. So we'll be back in 10 years with a follow-up video. Mr. Miyamoto.
Maybe we'll retire by then too.
Mr. Miyamoto will be 80. I'll be like an old grandma. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. We'll have the the big hearing aid things.
There we go.
What?
Speak into my horn, please.
Speak into my horn.
Yes.
All right. What do you think? We'd love to know if you've thought about this, the bigger picture that is Nintendo's future as they enter into the Switch 2 generation and what that all means. Tell us in the comments. We're gonna wrap this video up and see you later. Bye.
Bye.